everybody. We got Ben Segal joining us during this session. We're going to be talking about stadiums to startups, crafting the unforgettable customer experience. This guy's got a wealth of experience and been doing some cool stuff in the moment. Ben, thanks so much for joining. How are you?
Doing well, man. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here with you.
Yeah, I think this will be a fun session. Such a rich background in CX, CS, brand building, customer experience, whatever you want to kind of call it.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the fun stuff you've been up to lately.
Yeah. For a little bit of background, I'll say, my career sort of has these like two chapters. There's this first half where I was working in sports entertainment venues. So yeah, I've been around the Yankees, Mets, Patriots, Bruins, MSG, Barclays Center, all of that. And then,
I wish I would have
20,
known you then, man. I would have loved some tickets. I mean, I'm a
I
Yankees
know.
fan. I'm
I
a
always tried
closet
to hook my
Yankee
friends
fan.
up. Closet Yankee fan. Okay, I am an out of the closet Yankee fan. I was born and raised the Yankee fan, and still feel that way even after working there. But yeah, I did that for a decade or so, and then jumped into D2C e-commerce. I was with Freshly, Pair Eyewear, Thesis, and over the last like year and a half, I've been consulting. So I've worked with roughly 20 brands over
Wow.
that time. And I've been using customer, I've been using all the different tools in the
Yes.
CX tech stack, and really feel like I have more of a perspective now, consulting for many all at once versus being head of CX at just one
Yes.
brand.
Yes.
And so I sort of look back at some of these interviews that I had done back then and think like I knew what I was talking about, but I really only knew my tech stack. Now I'm like, oh, I have
Yeah.
perspective. I know a little bit more
Yeah.
now. So it
Yeah.
feels like I'm in a better position now.
Oh my goodness, that's such an interesting ability to be able to go like really deep with one company, but also now have that kind of super breadth. I mean, that's a lot of different companies. And
For sure.
some of the consulting stuff has been, I assume, mostly in that kind of D2C e-commerce world or a
Yeah.
decent back in some of the.
Um, So I would say the beginning of the time I was CXO with Create CX, and all of that was D2C e-commerce.
Yes.
And now
Yes.
with the CX audit, yes, there's some of that, but I really am trying to get back to my roots of those like in-person, venue experiences, whether it's dine-in movie theaters or restaurants,
Uh,
museums. Really getting into that, where of course they have a digital presence as well, and there's that part of figuring it out. But I like to see where we can improve the actual hospitality, the actual experience on site, and do that even better.
yeah. What do you feel like is the difference? I mean, there's I'm sure a lot, but having probably done some of the digital type stuff for more e-commerce, but also then, as you mentioned, like the physical or events or in-person stuff. Are those worlds completely separate? Do you feel like there's a lot of overlap? How do not many people have done, I think, the depth you've done in both.
Yeah, so I would say having started in person, moving to D2C e-commerce, and now going back to in person. Actually wrote a whole book on this, and I'm not here to pitch my book, but it's about like what are those things that are in common there. And so in the CX arena, I talk exactly about this, and I really do think they're the same. And I think that what you learn when you're in person is you have this one individual in front of you, and that customer, that guest, that fan, whoever it is, you're trying to create the best experience you can in that moment for them.
Yeah.
And what I found in D2C commerce is, okay, how do we do that for everybody all at once? And the what I came to realize is on the other side of that screen, it is just that one person alone, right? So we're thinking about going to the scale and having millions of customers, with these big websites, but they're not shopping all together, right? They're shopping individually. They're shopping on their phone.
Yeah.
They're shopping on their their desk, on their desktop.
Right.
And so,
Right.
what can we do to improve that experience for that one individual? And if we can get that right, that's going to go at scale because everyone's going to experience that
Mhm.
personalization in that way.
I
So I've
love
always tried to approach it as just this one person, and how do we get it right for them? And if we can do that at scale, you
that.
can make magic.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's something, again, just sticking on that same topic,
Sure.
do you feel like there's something that is missed? Maybe it falls into some of the same categorization, but that's missed when people, you know, between the D2C e-commerce world and the idea of kind of in person that maybe some of the D2C commerce people should pick up
Sure.
as go on their journey.
Mm. So what I see a lot in the D2C e-commerce world is they're trying to create that personalization, and they do so. through different automations. And so, for
Yeah.
example, having an email that tries to, pick up your first name from some bit of metadata that they have. And so then they put in this placeholder, hello, F dot name, and it's supposed to pull you out as Gabe, right? And so, yeah, most
There's
of the time
nothing
you're
better
going
than
to get
getting an email, by the way, that says, F dot name.
exactly,
Everyone's
exactly.
probably get that.
So that's what I would say is like, there are many ways to sort of like hit these like potholes in the road there where you're trying to provide personalization, but if you don't, it almost feels fake, it's not genuine, and you've done yourself more of a disservice than if you just
Yeah.
said, "Hey there," right? And like, "Hey there" would have been a better email than "Hey F dot name, how are you today?" Or I get a million emails a day, and they still think I'm at this company or that company, and they're like, I know you're, doing incredible things at Freshly. And I was like, Freshly doesn't exist right now. Like, what are we talking about? Like, I know that you didn't write that. And so they've done a worse, job of trying to provide personalization by doing it in this automated way. So one thing I think we do well in person is like really genuinely doing that and like creating a personal moment. And at D2C, e-commerce and at that scale here, sometimes when we try to do that, we're hurting ourselves more than helping.
Yeah, that's so that I'm thinking of all the times where that has gone bad in
Of
my
course.
work, where it's kind of like, hey, we, have thought name, or it feels sometimes generic, right? Like you said, like I saw that you worked at company XYZ, and you're like, I haven't worked at
Right.
that company for 20 years, but I can see where they probably pulled that from, or
Exactly.
it comes off. That's funny when personalization goes wrong, and
Yes.
but I think that's, you finding that balance is certainly important. On that same thread, I think one of the debates people are having a lot is this idea of how do you manage consistency with personalization, with automation across all these different touch points. And it feels like sometimes it's the wave that hits you and knocks you down and you can never get up again. As you kind of coach companies, like how this would probably be a 10-hour session, but
Yeah.
what's your quick answer to like how do you start to balance some of the things of low cost, automation, consistency, personalization? Quick
Yeah.
thoughts on starting that journey?
Yeah. So I think I've come out with a one-liner that has worked, and I repeat it to myself all the time. I always say this: automate the predictable, humanize the meaningful.
Hmm.
I think consistency comes from, strong knowledge base. It's macros, process design, but that shouldn't come at the cost of warmth, right?
Yeah.
As brands scale, the key is to use tools like a customer or any sort of like AI agent assist to surface context in real time.
Yeah.
So even like templated replies can still feel personal. I
Yeah.
think the goal is to be like reliable without sounding robotic, and I
Yeah.
think that's 100% achievable with the right systems if you can
I
get that
love
right.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. I need to write that. To say that one more time. It was
The
automate.
automate the predictable and humanize the meaningful.
Got it.
And
We
I
need to
think that
type.
that's ringing true no matter where I've been.
I think that's huge. I mean that, and that's where you can find, I think, the quick wins, right? A lot of
Yeah.
the I want to maybe double click on that, but a lot of people are wondering where AI and all this talk on AI, but that your statement there could probably apply to that concept as well. Is that true when you think of? I mean, I was going a little more big picture, but I wanted your
Sure.
thoughts on AI just because everybody talks about it now incessantly, and obviously there's some realness to it. But
Yeah.
what are some of the conversations you've been having around AI? Is it kind of this idea like, hey, find where you can find some of those things to automate and keep the humanization where you have the important and more meaningful stuff? Or where
Yeah.
have you kind of landed on some of those dialogues?
I think that is exactly where we land.
Is it?
So AI is going to fit in for sure, um, but it's not going to get rid of humans entirely, and I
Yeah.
don't think it should. So, we always have this debate, like, AI, here for jobs or here to stay, or here to help. And I think it's here to stay. It's here to help. I don't think it's here for jobs.
Yeah.
There may be some jobs that it's taking, but it's going to open up a path for other jobs that'll take the place of it.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, what I've seen work well is some human in the loop. And so AI is going to do what it can do. It will, automate a lot of the low-hanging fruit, things that, we're really not fun CX jobs in the past.
Yeah.
And it'll open up the ability for us as humans to have better, more engaging conversations and to interact with our customers in a new and probably more personalized way.
Yeah.
So I have seen that working well. I've also seen it not working well, and that's where like there's still a lot of people trying to figure that out. But
Yeah.
it can work well, and if done right, the experience to the end user is so much better with AI than it ever was without it. And so like it can really improve the overall experience, not just reduce costs.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think there's obviously a place for it. I don't know if it's going to solve all our problems
Right.
at the moment, maybe in the future, but at the moment, it feels like it's finding the right place, the right time, the right impact. Um,
Totally.
there's so much going on. One of the conversations I had with the CX leader was, there's so much going on that they sometimes feel like they don't even know where things are or are not working. It's just
Right.
like I'm trying to just kind of juggle so many balls. Is there certain warning signs that you've found, maybe in a customer's journey, maybe where there's friction, that is kind of a warning sign of loyalty, where you're like, man, certain areas I would look for typical things that are kind of disrupting customer loyalty would be in these areas, Gabe?
Yeah. I have so much to say on this topic because I think a lot of what I've done in the consulting space is try to get at this.
Yeah,
The the most high level thing I can say here is either brands are not doing this at all. They're not looking for the early warning signs, or if they are, they're looking for volume based, right? So
yeah,
what percentage of my tickets are about X, Y, or Z? And if we see that, too high, or if we see that jump up, then we should pay attention to that. What I like to do is see if we can overlay this data. So it's like, what are the customers saying, and
yeah,
what are they doing? Like, are they
yeah.
purchasing? Or are they not purchasing? And so one example of this that I'll give that I think can ring hit home for a lot of listeners. Um, let's say we have a regular D2C e-commerce brand. We know 20 to 25% of our tickets are going to be about where's my order, right? What's going on in shipping. But if we look at the purchase behavior of those individuals, you're going to see that they probably are going to come back and purchase again, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's upset with where their order is, they're almost telling you they're excited for their order, right? They want this thing to show up at their house. Sorry. They want it faster, they want it sooner. That's a high intent customer. So yes, these tickets are costing us something, and it's if we see that jump up, I guess that's a problem. But it's a problem sort of out of our control, right? It's on the
Yeah.
carriers, and there's a lot of things that happen on the way of getting an order to that person's house. And if we were to fix this, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to reduce churn or we're going to reduce friction in some way. There's always going to be friction in getting a box to someone's house. But you might see over here that there's like a 4% or 5% of tickets that are about, you know, a fit, right? How this product fits, either, glasses on their head or a shirt, and the way they feel, the way it lands on their waist. And like we might dismiss that, but that's actually a massive pain point because if the fit's not right, they're never going to buy again. And they're going to tell everybody else, it didn't work for me, right? It
Right.
wasn't good. And so, how do we decide first what are those intents that are actual friction that lead to somebody churning, even if it's a low percentage of tickets in the inbox? And we know this because we're going to overlay the intent with the purchase behavior and see what they did, and then start to monitor for
Wow.
those and
Yeah.
say, like, okay, well, if this went from 4% to 5%, that's huge, right? I
Yeah.
don't really care so much that Wismo went from 20% to 22%. That's going to
Sure.
fluctuate week over week, and it doesn't really matter. It's not going to move the needle. But these smaller ones over here tell us we have a problem. This is leading to churn. We need to fix this.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think if you can start to overlay some of that, have like, are companies able to pull that? That feels like that's not easy. Some of the stuff you were
It's
just
not
talking.
easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not easy. I have seen it done a few times really well. It's always a custom type build.
yeah.
Um, and I've had many a conversation with, many a third party tech vendor where we've always had this conversation where if we can crack that nut, this is the new tool of choice for everybody and we all need it. But nobody has figured out how to do that for every brand all at once. It's usually a custom build. We have to figure out, fresh every time.
Yeah, look, I think you're onto something. not the Holy Grail, but maybe there's some really
It's close.
that's some fun stuff. I might have to think a little more about that one. Um, where do I want to go next? One thing I was been thinking about is, look, I think you have a big um, oversight, just working with so many different companies and brands. Outside of AI, do you see some other big trends that you feel like people should really be tracking in order to stay ahead on the latest and greatest in CX?
Great question. um, I with the macro economy that we're looking at currently,
Sure.
and how there's always been this idea that CX is a cost center, not a revenue driver.
Yeah.
Um, I've been trying to think about how we have, high impact, low budget CX strategy. Where can we use CX to really make a difference? So this could be things like retention or win back efforts. So like, could we go into Looker or ThoughtSpot, wherever we have all of our data hanging
Yeah.
out, and pull a list of, let's call them whales that have spent this amount of money over time and are dormant for the last 6, 8, 12 months.
Yeah.
Um, and try to figure out like winning arguments to come back at them with like, hey, you love this, it went away, so you went away, but this thing's coming back, right? I don't know what that is. It'll change for every business. But can we put a list together and then have some of these humans in the CX
Yeah.
team who now have some bandwidth because we're using AI much better, reach out to them, call them personally, and say, "Hey, I wanted to reach out to you and let you know that here's a reason to come back," and see
Right.
if we can win some of that back. Track that, and then report out to the company, "Hey, yes, CX cost you this amount, last quarter. We've also driven this amount of new orders, which was a $0 CAC, right? Like, how do we do that and see this CX as a revenue driver at a low budget?" So
Yeah.
that's one trend I would say that I'm noticing out there.
Yeah, look, I think that's a big one, and I think a lot
Yeah.
of us are trying to figure out how to manage that the best way we can. You mentioned the macro environment. It's so many ups and downs, and I think that's got to be just part of our talk track, part of our go forward model. Do you feel like, as we kind of look to wrap here, I'm curious from an audience perspective. You again, you see a lot. You've been working with a lot of companies. What would be one thing you'd want to leave with the audience, as far as leave behind or takeaways for so many CX leaders? The macroeconomic economy you mentioned, you got the AI, you've got cost center, profit center. There's a lot to navigate. Any kind of words of wisdom or parting advice you'd give to the audience here?
I know that especially the world of AI and AI tools and CX is noisy and it's messy. And I know that there are many out there who are almost putting their hands up of like, I don't know. I don't know what's right. I get an email every day. I get this sales guy reaching out to me. This salesperson's reaching out to me over there. Um, what I would say is, especially now, lean in, try to experience this. Like take as many of those demos as you can.
Interesting. Yeah.
Ask as many questions as you can. See like what they're offering. Learn
Yeah.
this, right? Because um, I remember back to when I was a kid and the internet was coming of age and we all had AOL accounts. Like having lived that experience and like played with all the different search engines and understood Google and Yahoo and Bing and like there was Ask Jeeves, right?
Yeah.
That was a lived experience that they can't take away from me. And so because I know what that was like and how to explore that world, I felt more informed
Yeah.
when, the internet became the way of the world. I think that's going to happen with AI.
Yeah.
And those who understand everything that was happening every day here. Those who were playing with all the new ChatGPT models and understood that this one could do this, but then this one could do that. And here's how we improved. And I remember when that happened. That was around January of that year when that happened because I can connect it to this other piece of my life. You will then be like so much more informed
Yeah.
moving on from here. And I understand that it's a crazy, wild time, but those who lean in and know what's going on and are really paying attention are going to be the most well informed coming out of this, and they'll understand the history of like how we got there. So
Awesome.
do not throw your hands up. Dive
Yeah.
in and like find out what's going on.
I love the analogy to the .com or the
Yeah,
yeah, we're on the precipice of something, and that we're taking the demos.
I know.
It's
I know. Do them.
sometimes it gets annoying, but it's like, you know what? the best way to learn is kind of learn from others sometimes, and just experiencing these conversations, because yeah, there's a lot of upstarts and they've got
Right.
crazy thoughts sometimes, but to your point, there's going to be the new Salesforce, the new Zendesks, the
Exactly.
large, they're coming. There's going to be some, I think, big movement. And so whether you sign up with that or you just gain the knowledge of, wow, how are they structuring these AI agent things or whatever, I think that's wise. I had one person tell me they tried every week to block out a couple hours where they just like, you know what, I'm just going to try to get some demos in there and
Yeah.
experience the latest and greatest, and it's like a mini
Yeah.
mini free education, a little MBA in AI.
Exactly.
I love that. I think that's great advice. So cool. All right, well, Ben, appreciate you taking the time. A really fun talk track. Congratulations for all you've done. I
Thank
think
you.
with the CX audit and then beyond, I think you're making a dent in the space and people are recognizing it. So thanks for all you do. For the audience, I hope you enjoyed the session and enjoy the rest of the day. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.